Welcome to the Mama's Village podcast, CT, where Fairfield County moms discover they're not alone in their struggles while uncovering the hidden gems, local treasures, and real solutions that make motherhood in Connecticut not just survivable, but extraordinary. I am Abby Hartley, and I am your host. I have a little bit of a cold, so you're going to have to just deal with my voice because we have two amazing guests today that are going to continue the series on divorce. I've had a lot of people reach out to me about divorce and moms in the Fairfield County area that are going through it. And so I feel that having this three-part series is important and to know that moms, you're not alone and there's a lot of support out there for you. So without further ado, we have two amazing women that help a lot. The first one, she is a licensed marriage and family therapist and former CSSD family relations counselor who works with individuals, couples, and family to help them find relief and hope in whatever divorce challenges they face, and is certified in the popular Gottman method. Sue Gabriel. Welcome, Sue.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And then also joining us is she graduated from Fordham with a master's in social work and has experience working with children and adolescents in crisis as an emergency mobile psychiatric clinician. She worked in emergency mobile psychiatric services before transitioning to the Department of Children and Families, and then spent 10 years working as a family relations counselor until 2024. Please welcome Brittani DeAndrea.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So you both have experience working with the court systems in divorce mediation and co-parenting counseling. The name of your company is Family Court Solutions, correct?
Yes.
Sue, can you give me a brief overview of like the services that Family Court Solutions has for people and who in general you serve?
Sure. So we basically offer divorce mediation at a much lower cost than attorneys. That's one of our services. And then when people are going through divorce, often they are required to have co-parenting counseling. So we offer that as well. Brittany offers specifically just her GAL services, which is the guardian ad litem that are often assigned during a court case. She also offers reunification and supervised visitations. And we offer support, just therapy support for families going through divorce process, individuals, families, children, anybody looking just for help and support as they're navigating this very long, difficult process. And by utilizing us, we can sometimes help shorten the length of the court case. And it's, if they're able to be amicable and mediate rather than litigate is the idea.
Great. And Brittany, how long have you been working with children and what do you do for the kids and adolescents? Why did you even start working with that population?
I've actually been working with children for quite some time. As I started one of my internships that I in grad school during the summer, I did a juvenile detention center as a classification and program officer. When I graduated Fordham, I went into the emergency mobile psychiatric services, and then I transitioned to DCF for a year. So it's been, and then into family relations for about 10 years. So I've been working with kids for quite some time. I'd say about, 12 to 15 years at this point.
Wow. Tell me about working with kids and what it is that exactly you're doing. Are you placing them in homes? Are you?
So essentially when I think after working with DCF and kind of seeing the kids transitioning or attempting to transition through reunification services, I became interested more and more in the court system. I then wanted to. I always had an reason that I wanted to work like within the actual court, which is why I transitioned into family relations so I could be more involved inside the courtroom. So then my family and children aspect continued from there, where I was working more um, side by side with the parents and the kids. So once I left the state of Connecticut, I decided I wanted to continue doing that. I learned a lot through my work at family relations, you know, in relation to how each part, all the attorneys work, the guardian ad litem works, and seeing a lot of the issues that parents and children were having, trying to navigate divorces and separation. Um, and just meeting one on one with the kids, the types of information they would say. So I decided, you know, when I spoke to Sue about leaving, she had already had hands on work with doing the work outside of the court. So I kind of went under her wing, and then we kind of unfolded into more of this holistic approach where we can kind of have different services, some where she's more prominent in, and then times where I kind of pick up other things. But I've always enjoyed working with the kids, and then, you know, including the parents, but the one-on-one with the kids has always been important to me. And probably because, you know, I can relate to some of the kids that are transitioning and trying to deal with the divorce aspect. So I think that that's helpful in the approach that I utilize when I'm working with them.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going to get into some pretty serious stuff here. We're talking about the court system and we're talking about divorce. So ultimately, let's start off with a little bit of a lighter fare, if you don't mind. Tell me a little bit, Sue, about, do you have children here in Fairfield County? Have you raised them? You know, do you have anything that you do with them, that kind of thing?
Sure. Well, my son actually, he just turned 25. So I was born and raised in Fairfield County and raised him in Fairfield County, and we are still here. He just graduated from college, so he was a little bit on the slower side took him 6 years in college, but then again, it took me a while too. So, but we enjoyed, you know, living by the water here. And there's just a lot of stuff for kids in terms of sports activities. He went to a a private Catholic school and then transitioned to the public school for high school. And he loved doing the ROTC program that's offered here. And he also was a police explorer, which is like a junior police officer. So he loved being able to do that. And it's very active here in Fairfield County. A lot of the departments have explorers. And so that, you know, just growing up here, and I know I live in a city, but it's like everybody knows everybody. So it was nice having that support, knowing the resources and, you know, where to turn, who to turn to. I am somebody, people come to me and they're like, hey, you know, how do I navigate this? Or I need a good builder, or I need, you know, a plumber. I've got those people because I've grown up with them and, you know, built relationships that we still have.
That's great. And Brittany, what about you?
Well, my son, he's 7 now, so there's a little bit of age difference with that. But I mean, we grew up in New Haven, or he grew up in New Haven County, but we often go to my office. He just loves coming to see mommy's office, mommy's office. But he loves the beach. It doesn't matter what beach you go to, if there's sand and water, that's all he cares about. And he loves going to Jacob's Pickles ever since they opened that in Norwalk. So he's like me. I like the beach. I like pickles. So if we're going to my office, we'll take like a little trip over there. And he likes the aquarium too. They have the aquarium over there. He loves going to that. So essentially, that's kind of his thing and my thing that we do together.
That's fun. They just opened, I just visited a new coffee shop in Fairfield, and it's called The Roost. And they just opened up, and it's right across the street from Trader Joe's, very close to ShopRite. Very cute. You wouldn't think that it's there, but I do want to spread the word that it is there, and it's very cute. And I think people should take a look. So back to more serious matters. We're going to talk about divorce. We're going to talk about moms in divorce. We're going to talk about kids and parenthood. I want to talk about, this is a really emotional subject. And there are a ton of books and there are a ton of things to read and listen to. Um, can you guys suggest anything, read, listen to, watch, that would be helpful for anybody that's about to embark on this journey or is going through it or anything like that?
So, I mean, it is a journey and it is a long road. There are a lot of podcasts out there, and I tell people one of my favorites is Mel Robbins. It's very upbeat, and I think there's a lot of good advice that people can take and kind of, you know, not just with divorce, but in all aspects of their life. But I do have people who are like, you know what, I listened to this one episode and it really is just like a specific episode that I'll pick and choose for people and hope that it kind of draws them in. And then they start looking and going through, and they usually are able to find things that resonate with them. And there's a lot of really good advice on how to, sort of let people be who they are while you're still going through your journey, and really recognizing what you're going through. And what you're going through doesn't have to be the same as what your friend is going through or what your ex-spouse is going through. And it's really the internal, like what I'm going through, and that's what matters. Um, there's some good books, Mom's House, Dad's House, that helps with co-parenting. It's how to make two homes for your child, which I think is really important because a lot of times people start saying, well, when they come home, well, they have two homes now, and you want the kids to feel comfortable with that. So it is a book that I do often recommend. I'm trying to think. Brittany, do you have any other ideas that you?
Um, Well, I work with a lot of also individuals that are going through the divorce process and do the one-on-one. So a lot of time I'm working with them on kind of staying present, which is a huge thing because it's like, what if this is happening? I'm stressing out about this. So I kind of tell people to listen to sometimes some mindfulness stuff. So one of the podcasts that I listen to is called The One You Feed. It's not specifically about divorce, but it just kind of talks about personal growth, positive habits, kind of mindfulness training, keeping yourself zen, those kind of techniques, which definitely come in handy, especially when you're dealing with somebody that's already anxious or they're depressed, and then they're adding this onto their plate, and there's a lot going on. So essentially, it's more about kind of like reeling yourself back in, and kind of get grounding yourself because it does happen a lot. And I think it's important, for at least the mental health piece, aspect of it, to kind of that reminder where if you do remind somebody, they're like, oh, yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. Thanks for reminding me. And it's sometimes just those small things. So that's one thing that I listen to a lot for myself too, because having all that all day, sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going home. I need to kind of take a step back now. um, so yeah, that's one of the
Yeah.
things that I would recommend for people that are stressing out before starting and then during the process.
And I
Yeah.
forgot the most important one. There is one, the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, which, is just navigating conversations about separation, divorce, emotions. Um, so that could help guide people as well.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. This is a little segue into what we're going to be talking about, but I really like the Diary of a CEO. And they had, it was back in 2024, in September of 2024, he did a interview with Dr. Gottman and his wife.
John and
And
Julie.
yes, his wife Julie, and really interesting episode about, why marriages work, why they don't work, and what their theory is. And I did find it to be very informative and interesting. I think we should dive in a little bit to because this is the kind of therapy that you give. And first, before we talk about that, I just want to get a little bit more clear on the kind of therapy you give to couples. There's something called discernment therapy. Is that true? And then
Yes.
is that the same as regular couples therapy, or what's the difference?
So discernment therapy is generally when one partner's contemplating divorce and the other partner is saying, I'm all in. So it's sort of that they're coming to you, one's all in, the other one is kind of like, I'm leaning out. And sometimes the leaning out partner isn't really quite sure that they really want to go this route. So there is a specific process that we go to. It's very guided. There was there was trainings and certifications that helps figure out is this. So when people come to me and they're like, "Well, I'm not sure if we're going to do couples therapy or if we're going to do mediation." This type of discernment counseling is very structured. It is, a certain number of sessions, a certain model in the sessions that helps people decide. And at the end of those 6 sessions, and sometimes even before, it could be shorter. Some people just pull the plug and say, I can't do this anymore. But it is a way that I have had couples that have decided to go into the couples therapy and put the mediation on hold.
I see. So at what point does the couples, so we're talking for you, Brittany, we're talking about like we've already established we're getting a divorce. Now we're talking about co-parenting. Now we're talking about all of the division, all of that. But if we back up for a minute, Sue, you're seeing people and trying to help them get through this, right? And trying to help them, possibly save their marriage. Is that correct?
Yes, if possible, I do. And there are times that I do also help them to, split ways amicably. Like, how can we go through this and still kind of be friendly? And we both have the best interest of our children if we can't save the marriage.
And you use the Gottman therapy.
Gottman method, yeah. So I'm certified. I loved it so much that there's only 6 certified therapists in the state of Connecticut, and there's only 566 worldwide.
Oh,
So
wow.
not a lot of people will get trained in it, like Brittany did do level 1 training. I did all 3 levels and then did the certification because I truly believe that the model works. I'd say I have probably an 80% success rate with using the Gottman method. The other, 20% are people who are coming in already sort of like, we're not really sure we want to stay together. They've kind of checking the box of let's just try therapy, which I understand. And then, there's mental health issues, substance abuse issues. So I kind of like that 20% sort of is what this kind of the fail, no, I wouldn't even say fail rate, but the rate that they decide we're splitting up.
Wow. So that's really good. Wow.
Yeah. And that's why to me, like if you're going to do couples therapy, it's an investment. It really works rather than, oh, I think we all come out of, at least in the family therapy side, we all come out saying, we're going to do couples work. I didn't know crap about couples therapy. We sort of hang these shingles on the door because we're marriage and family therapists and we have just a few courses, maybe 2 courses in couples therapy. I didn't know anything. It was more, I felt like I was a mediator. I was mediating the arguments between a couple, whereas now I have a toolbox with things that really help to build connection, and help you to have conflict in a more appropriate way. Because we're all going to fight. It's not the fighting that's bad, it's how you fight.
So let's talk about that for a second. Um, and let's talk about what we're seeing as far as like, and I don't mean to make it about women versus men or anything like that, but there's a clear difference. And I know, just from listening to Dr. Gottman, that there's a clear difference in the way that men sort of communicate versus the way that women communicate. And that's what this method helps with. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so do you mind explaining just a little bit about that and about what you're seeing as far as what in particular, do you have any like tips in particular if you're having some sort of conflict with your significant other?
So when you have heterosexual relationships, the females tend to be more emotional, the men tend to be more analytical, or I want to fix it. I think that's the problem when a woman goes to their husband or their partner and says, I'm really stressed out or I'm exhausted from parenting, the men's reaction is to want to fix it. And that's where a lot of times it starts to go down the rabbit hole of you're not listening, you're not hearing me because he's busy offering all of these suggestions because that's just the way they are built is they want to fix things. And then they feel, sort of helpless and hopeless that I can't fix it. And then there's the rejection piece. So it sort of spirals down and then you have these like blow ups where you end up having the 4 horsemen that you want to stay away from, which is the criticism, the contempt, the stonewalling, and the defensiveness.
Mhm.
So the idea is to really, really try to actively listen to what your partner is saying have more scheduled, everybody's so busy, have more scheduled times, even if it's 10-minute check-ins of how are you feeling, and really hearing your partner reflect back what they're saying and repeating it back, like the active listening.
So, what do you think what's the deepest root of the issue, do you feel like, for most relationships? Do you see a trend? Do you see a pattern?
Yeah, most people are fighting over one is finances, another is, trust. Do you really trust me? Will you be there for me? Will you, even when I show up in my ugliest ways, are you going to be there for me? Um, and when it comes to, I think, parenting in itself, is that do you trust the way I'm parenting? And also, are you respecting how I want to be part of this? Sometimes women tend to sort of do most of the parenting with children. So a lot of times the dads are feeling very left out and very isolated, and they feel like they don't respect my opinion. She doesn't want to hear what I'm saying. When they try to come in, it's like, no, 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 we've already got this over here. You go over there. And now there's this rejection. So the men are like then retreating into, I'm not going to be part of this. She's calls the rules and I'm just here.
Interesting. And then, is there anything with the Gottman theory or method, Brittany, that you can use with the kids and adolescents that you see to help them communicate better with, their parents that are splitting up?
I think it boils down again to like Sue was saying, like the check-ins and stuff. Like even when it comes to the kids, it's like who's bringing who this sport, and then they have a birthday party this day, and I'm working these hours, and he's working these hours, and there's no real time that, they used to make a big deal about, oh, when you have dinner, sit around the table together and have dinner. The kids in their electronics, the parents being busy with work stuff, there's a whole component, I think, being missed at this point with like being able to check in, like Sue says, it's the two parents being able to check in with each other, but then it's also like, what are you guys doing with the kids? Are you checking in with the kids? Um there's a thing called uh mommy and me or daddy and me, where if there's one kid or multiple kids at nighttime, ensuring like you're going to spend that 5-10 minutes with each child before they go to bed. Sometimes if there's multiple kids together, but also giving them that one-on-one time, because the one-on-one time is important. It's not just, having everybody together for that time, but giving your attention to each child individually as well. So that's a big thing that I think is missed a lot because of everybody's busy schedules and the constantly going and the stress levels and everything else that's going on.
Interesting. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make within this process? Once they've come to you, whether they've decided or not to split up.
It's about trying to win because there's no winners and losers. I mean, the only people who are going to lose here are the children, but it becomes this fight and feeling like I have to win. I have to win. I have to be the primary parent. I want to get what I want. And the only person that's hurt are the children. And I say your children are going to fare as well as the two of you do in a divorce. I have kids that I've worked with from when they were 12 and they're now 21 and graduating college, and I've seen them throughout the years, and and their parents are still fighting. They're grown and their parents are still fighting, and they said that was the biggest struggle for them, was being put in the middle. And feeling like they have to take care of one or both of the parents. And I mean, it's very telling when when kids and adolescents and young adults come out and say, my parents weren't able to take care of us. They really didn't care about what we needed. It was about what they wanted and how they were gonna come out of this. And even if there's, and then it's hard because sometimes there's one parent that really does care and is really working hard to co-parent. And I get it. Sometimes you just can't. The other side, like I said, there could be mental health issues, substance abuse. And it just still makes it very difficult because the child is the one that's caught in the middle.
Hmm.
And going along with that too, I think when parents come in and they think they only have to do this until the child's 18, as Sue is pointing out. It goes after that. And I always have to explain. I'm like, what do you think happens when your child's 18? They have a high school graduation and then they get married or they go to college or, whatever big events that happen for them. You don't want your child to have to feel the anxiety like, okay, I have to invite mom and dad, and what is it going to be like? Are they going to make it about them? Are they going to ignore each other? Because people think, oh, well, we don't talk to each other. That's still making the decision to not communicate, and that still impacts your kids. It still causes them to have anxiety and be upset. So I think that a lot of people, and it happens a lot where people come in and they're like, well, I only have to do this till they're 18, and it's a lifelong commitment essentially. So working on being able to accept how the other parent is and working with each other rather than against each other will go a longer way, because it doesn't end when your kid's 18. So
I agree with that. I worked in the court system and my son's father and I were never married. We co-parented from when my son was young, and I always said, I will never go to court after watching this. I said, if my son wants to live with his dad, I'm packing his bags. Like I'm not going to put him through this. But my son broke his leg when he was 21. He had had a quad accident, and luckily, my son's father and myself, we all live in the same town. He's like right across from my office, and my son had to stay with him because he lived on one floor, and we had to work together. Like, okay, who's going to give him lunch? Who's going to give him his shot? And so we had to co-parent. We had to be able to work together for his best interest. So it's like it's better to be friendly. You don't have to be friends, but you can be friendly. And in things like that, God forbid, hospitalizations, accidents, illness, you're able to be there.
Yeah. I would think that developing yourself internally is really, really important,
Yeah.
especially when talking about the therapy piece of this, but also even trying to get through this with your children and with because and what I remember, my parents, had a high conflict divorce, but I was 18. And so I was away at college, but I remember thinking if they hate each other so very much, that internalized for me, like I come from them.
Yeah.
And how is it possible that I could be amazing if they both have such terrible, awful things to say about each other? And I just remember, and so that internal, and then, both of my parents sort of went on this internal dive and both had to do therapy and all of that stuff. And I think that is a really important piece. And, that's why I think the Gottman method is really interesting because that's a way to sort of get into, the internal, not, what's at the root cause, or hopefully you get into what's at the root cause of your issues. Do you think a lot of it has to do with how people grew up and how they see themselves and how, that kind of thing? Like, what do you think, for let's say for moms who have, a really great relationship, but of course there's no relationship is perfect. Is it worth it to work on, the relationship together internally and get to the root together, or should you do it yourself? Or like, how do you strengthen a marriage and make sure that you're not going down, these paths that will lead to destruction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for all of us to do the individual deeper work. I mean, we all have traumas from children, big traumas, little traumas. And, nobody has perfect parents. I mean, our kids will all be sitting on a couch telling their therapist about how we failed. And again, we're always trying to do better than our parents did. And we also have a lot more tools than they had. Therapy was not a thing back then. People went, but it was very hush hush. And now it's like kind of like a badge of honor. Kids are like, I have a therapist and I have a therapist. So it is doing your own work so that you are not projecting your issues and your anxieties and worries and things that happen to you onto your children. So, you're bringing that into the relationship. I always say when two people are arguing, it's not two adults arguing, it's two 8-year-olds that are arguing. It's the child part of you that is arguing for whatever it is, the power and control, the love and respect. you're looking for that and your partner is going to mirror those things just unconsciously. We pick these people that will continue to play out, the same struggles we had with our parents. And a lot of people realize they'll say, I married my father or I married my mother. Yeah, you did.
Brittany, what do you think some of the pitfalls of this process, this divorce process, are for parents and when it comes to co-parenting? What are some things that maybe are surprising or you wouldn't necessarily think would happen to them? I mean, what are some mistakes that people make, pitfalls, anything like that?
Um, I think that I think people need to come in to the into the divorce, and I think Sue kind of touched upon this. Like, you're getting an attorney, you're paying for an attorney, and when things happen, your immediate answer shouldn't be, well, I need to talk to my attorney, because again, this is your life. Your attorney is going to go on and continue doing what they do, but the decisions you make and the anger that you have and not being able to kind of step back and put your emotions to the side to be logical about things is a problem, because you rely on all these other people to essentially make a decision. And as I always tell people, if you have an attorney or you're self rep, every judge is different, every jurisdiction is different. You're essentially rolling the dice. At least when you learn to communicate with the other parent and do things that maybe you don't 100% want to do or 100% feel comfortable doing, it's still your parenting plan, or it's still you know, your divorce that's being written up by yourselves, rather than having your attorneys fight for it, which, sometimes there are attorneys that just like to drag things out. I'm not saying that that's all of them, but there are some that do that. And then if there's not an agreement, you're going in front of the judge to let the judge say, and they do this every day, multiple cases a day. I always tell people, I'm sorry, but your case is really not special. They're just going to come in and do the thing that they believe is best. And it draws it out. Sometimes you got to get referred to family relations and things get even more extended. So it's really just kind of finding that balance of, okay, I'm angry, but am I going to let my anger control this process? Or am I going to take a step back and try to think logically about it? And again, maybe not being 100% happy, but like Sue said, this isn't about winning. It's about keeping your children at the forefront of it and what's best for them, not what you want or the other parent wants. It's what is going to work best for my child, with that, better than anybody else that's involved in the process.
Yeah.
What's the best case scenario for a divorce with children? Like how quickly, how easy can it be? And then obviously I know that there is a worst case scenario, and it can be very high conflict and terrible. Is there a way to sort of put that into, some quick words?
Yeah, I think best case scenario is you can mediate out your divorce. There's not a lot that goes to a divorce. It's custody, uh, a visitation, real estate, houses, personal property, post-majority educational support, which is college. Sometimes your kids are only 3, you're just checking the box to leave that open. Any joint debts, alimony, and child support is really what goes into it. Child support is numbers that are run by guidelines, so it is what it is. It's based on the incomes. Um, so if you could mediate it out, we had what used to be called short calendar, and some days I would do, 19 divorces in a morning. So they were just real short, quick. We wrote up the agreement. You went in front of the judge. They signed off on it. Now you don't even have to go into a courtroom anymore. If you guys are doing it jointly, you file the paperwork together, you'll get an email saying you are divorced. So the agreement can be written up by yourselves, by mediators, by people like us. You never walk into a courtroom. Worst case scenario, I've seen cases go on for over 3 years, and people are spending several $100,000, on a divorce that's money that could be used for your kids, college or, your retirement. And
quite literally anything better than that.
anything. And I have to say that those are the worst of the worst. I mean, I've watched tri cases go all the way up to Middletown because, they were so high conflict and the amount of collaterals that are being called in and the amount of time preparing is just unbelievable. An average divorce attorney in Fairfield County is anywhere between 450 and $900 an hour. You do the math. And times two, and every phone call. I had one guy who used to call his lawyer because he would just call and chat with him, and then he gets this bill. And I said, I kept telling you, your lawyer's not your friend. Like, you're being billed for this stuff. And he had no idea how he ran up like $4,000 in a month just from these phone calls. And I'm like, mm, you know, so I don't think people realize when they get into it, and then they're into it and they have to switch attorneys because now this attorney's not working. It's just it becomes, all encompassing, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, and it can drain you.
Yeah. And then Brittany, what about for the adolescents and kids, how do we keep them out of the court system?
Again, I think that comes back to the parents being able to uh, mediate and discuss and negotiate things with each other, being open to bend a little bit, understanding that not everybody's perfect, including themselves. And, this is taking it more as like a growing opportunity, so that they can learn to be, the single parent with their child and kind of taking it's going to be more one-on-one time than for most maybe than previously. But I mean, I still deal with one parent wanting to put their child in therapy and the other parent saying no, they don't need it. I always tell people you don't want to always just go to a therapist once, your world is crumbling around you. The earlier you put your kid in therapy, it doesn't have to necessarily be like, okay, I'm sending my kid in to talk about separation and divorce. I meet with a lot of kids that's like a piece of it, but there's so many other things that their parents probably don't know that they're dealing with. And essentially, they're learning coping skills. There's nothing wrong with going to therapy to learn coping skills that their parents probably didn't learn that maybe they should still be learning to kind of learn how to even out, deal with the stressors that are coming up, learning how to deal with, other relationships in their life. So again, I think it's just, and then sometimes it's important to have those family sessions where even though I'm the child's therapist, when I feel like it's appropriate and they feel it's appropriate, I'll bring mom or dad into a session or both, and kind of being able to have those discussions so that everyone is kind of on the same page, learning how to navigate these changes all together. So, but again, that takes two parents being able to co-parent with one another to help their child in what they're dealing with, which can be a number of things. The anxiety might be one piece that's working on, but the anxiety is coming from school and testing and friends or boyfriend, girlfriends, and other family issues. So I think that that's just kind of the piece where it's like you need to come to the realization there's things that you're probably not doing right, but it's not about criticizing. It's about, okay, let me take this information so that I can grow to be a better parent, to be a better adult, that kind of information.
And just to back up on that, I think the biggest thing that people need to have is flexibility. Because as your kids change and grow, your parenting plan has to be able to change and you've got to be flexible. And I do find that there are a lot of cases where there is a personality disorder involved. And again, that is where you really need therapy. Sometimes psychovals are the greatest thing because it's able to really spell out everybody's got something. Even the most put together people have something that comes up in a psychological evaluation. And a lot of times we know with personality disorders, the person who has one cannot see it. I can go on to a docket and pull it up, and I can see based on, some of the most contentious divorces, there is mental health issues underlining. And that is tough. That is really hard. Because if you are not flexible and you're rigid and you think I won and this is my parenting plan and your kids are 5 and 8, the difficulty is as they grow, you're not able to step out of that and navigate it. So you're still, trying to parent these kids as if they were 5 and 8, and the kids really feel that.
Yeah. Are you finding that there's any sort of trend in who is filing for divorce more? Is it more women, more men? Is it for a particular reason lately? Anything like
I
that?
definitely think women have began to file more than they used to. They don't track the stats on males versus females, but with women in the workplace and having a job, they feel less stuck. A lot of times we still get people that there's a stay-at-home parent, primarily the women, that they feel like I don't have financially, I can't leave. Now that women are working and a lot of it's dual careers, they are able to file where I think women used to sort of stay. It was that where am I going to go with three children and no job? It is giving a lot more power to the women because, I think a lot of people just stayed because it was the only choice that they had.
Mhm.
Not to say there aren't people who still stay home and still are stuck in that sort of role. I have stay-at-home dads that feel trapped, like I don't have any financial security if I leave. I do find that more and more couples are doing prenups as well, like so that they're protecting whatever they have prior to or, their own pensions. It does make it a little bit easier when they do, if they do part ways. I know some people say, well, if you sign a prenup, then you're just predicting it's going to end. The rate of divorce continues to climb, and it's almost 60% of first marriages are ending in divorce, and it's like 84% of second marriages. So it's evolving, and I think people are trying to protect themselves a bit more and trying to say, look, if this doesn't work, I don't want to go down this horrible path, which I think is definitely a smart thing to do.
Say that again, that stat about first marriages ending and second marriages ending.
60% of first marriages end in divorce, and it's 84% of second marriages end in
Wow.
divorce. So you imagine what third and fourth marriages, I do have people who
Wow.
are on third and fourth.
You would think by the second marriage, people would be like, know what they're doing.
Well, no, because now you're navigating stepchildren and, commingling two households, so it becomes even more difficult.
Mm.
Second marriages, I find a lot of times they do have prenups because now they're trying to protect their their first marriages. But no, then you have on top of that all these issues of, co-parenting somebody else's children and the stepkids trying to integrate and, different. Some people then have like teenagers or young adults and the other ones have little ones. Plus, and you have our children. It's like his, hers, and theirs. So I think that leads to a lot more dynamics, a lot more conflict and stress.
So, what are, do you have 5 ways that you can sort of bulletproof your marriage?
Yeah, so a lot of those will come from the Gottman, techniques. But one of them is building love maps, and that's staying curious about your partner's world. When you meet your partner, chocolate ice cream might be their favorite flavor. You don't realize 20 years later they don't like chocolate anymore. And you want to know this stuff. So you really want to know what are their fears, what are their dreams, and what are their daily stressors. And Gottman actually has a free app. It's called the Gottman Card Deck. And it's different. There's love maps, there's sex questions, but do the love maps with your partner. It's kind of fun. You could go sit outside when it's nice and have a glass of wine or a glass of soda and just ask each other the questions and just really want to know how have they changed because a lot of people don't do that. Another one is nurturing the fondness and admiration, expressing appreciation daily. Everybody wants to be appreciated, and we take things for granted. Like, thank you so much that I have clean clothes, or thank you so much for that cup of coffee, or packing my lunch. It's the things that are, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't feel appreciated. I make dinner every night. Thank that person. It'll make them feel good. Turning towards each other. Notice when your partner is throwing out a bid for attention and connection, whether it's a smile, whether it's cracking a joke, and respond with presence. Even if they want to just share an article with you and maybe you're not really that interested, pretend to be interested. Even with your children, it's like when they come running to you, some of these you can relate to with your children. Um, Managing conflict gently. And that's where you're saying, I feel very frustrated over the dishes that were piled in the sink, rather than saying, you never put your dishes in the sink or you never load the dishwasher. you're going to get a very different response. And the other one is create shared meeting. And those are rituals. Those are daily rituals, family dinners, morning check-ins, coffee, making sure that you're spending 10 to 15 minutes a day with each other and that you're valuing and strengthening your bonds. And I think, you know, strong marriages aren't conflict free. They thrive because two people really feel that they know each other and they respect each other and they feel connected and safe. And they know that an argument doesn't mean that it's over. It just means that we're disagreeing and we can do this in a gentle way. And if you do screw up and you do snap at your partner and say, you snapped because you were just tired or there was something else, going back and making that repair. And that's also important with your children. You come in and you're like, just leave me alone. I'm in the middle of something. Whoever it is, whether it was your children or your spouse, they don't deserve that. And being able to go back and say, I snapped earlier and I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have taken out on you. I had a bad day at work and I want you to know I'm sorry and I love you. And I mean, that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah. Brittany, is there any way to sort of foolproof your parenting when you're going through this and when you're in any sort of conflict, whether it's high conflict or you're trying to get through something or even just like one specific fight that you're having? Is there anything you can do with your children to sort of foolproof and make sure? Because we don't want to mess our children up. Like, how do we make sure that we're not messing them up?
So again, I think, it's just helpful that you're doing like the check-ins with them and like Sue was just saying, kind of like going back. I mean, most people are going to be quick to snap when you're trying to deal with putting your paperwork together or whatever it is, and you're going through court and you have that stress lingering, even if you're not conscious of it, there's still at that point in time, there's still a subconscious piece. And going to therapy, there's never like a time that you can't like, oh, I should have went earlier. It's just about being able to make that decision and being present, whether you do it individually or with the family. It kind of holds everybody accountable in some sense. And again, this isn't just about, uh, it's harder when you're dealing with substance abuse or personality disorders or people with more severe mental health issues. But in a sense, like even then, when you have older kids, you can kind of help them to navigate to realize, you know, even though this is their parent, they still have to kind of have a way to deal with them too, because their parent might not always be right about everything. And how you grow up and looking at your parents is different when you get older and you're kind of things have changed. So I think, just if there is a struggle happening and a dynamic struggle that's happening, it's important to just be aware of it. If things start to change, paying attention to grades, paying attention to behavioral issues, and making sure you do something sooner rather than later.
Like therapy? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. That sounds like that's the right thing. I mean, and therapy is amazing. Making sure you get the right therapist for you is really, really, important. And so I think it's really important that we're talking to you guys. And it sounds like you guys would be great people to support, anybody that's going through this. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about all of this stuff. It is a tough subject, and I know that there are a lot of people that are going through it, and we're here for them. And thank you so much. I appreciate it. Do you guys have
Thank
anything that
you.
is coming up that you want to tell people about for, moms, for dads, for, whoever it is?
I think just remembering to really try and be present and just remember that we're all humans and we all have flaws. And it's okay. And that's why I think just the whole journey of the self-awareness and exploration into our own things it's a lifelong process. People say, you know, how long do I have to be in therapy? Well, there's no time limit, and you don't have to be in therapy per se because there is so much out there. I mean, there's books, there's podcasts, there's YouTube, Gabor Mate and all these, Jay Shetty. There's just so much stuff out there where you can do your own inner work. And I think that's the most important thing is doing that inner work.
Mhm. Yeah. What about you, Brittany?
Absolutely.
Any other
Um,
last words?
no, I think, just knowing that you're not the only person going through the process, and there's other people. And if you can reach out, I know there's a lot of mom support groups and stuff when it comes to these kinds of situations, and being able to, again, like, you're not the only person, and being able to be open and talk to other people about it. I think the support piece is a big component, and knowing, being able to tell yourself that, things are going to be okay, and not allowing yourself to kind of go down those rabbit holes. And you got to take care of yourself first before you could take care of other people. So when you do have kids, you got to be, just be mindful and self-aware of what's going on with yourself, so that, you're able to do what you need to do as a parent and going through the process and everything. So,
And I think just one other thing, I think, people talk about their divorce with their friends and their families, and just always be mindful. Everybody's divorce is individual. Like if I'm talking about, oh, my divorce was this, you're comparing it to one divorce. So it's like we can compare, we've got thousands of divorces, and, a lot of people had become divorce coaches, and judges too. Like you don't know what you're going to get because they're jaded by like their own divorce. So just always remember, even when you're asking people for advice, be careful because they're going to give you advice on what they went through. And if they had a horrific divorce, sometimes I feel like people get jaded and it scares them. So just be careful where you seek that. I mean, it's okay to talk about, but don't let it take you down the rabbit hole that, oh my God, my friend Jenny, had a 3-year divorce and went through 4 lawyers. Yours doesn't have to be that way.
That
mhm.
is fine. Yeah. Thank you guys so very much. I appreciate you. And
Thank you.
I will post your information on my Instagram and let everybody know where they can find you. Do you have a website you want to tell them what the website is?
Sure. It's familycourtsolutionct.com. And you can research either of us individually as well. We've got Psychology Today profiles and individual profiles as well.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Thanks.